There was a time when Oakland, Maine was a center of thriving industry. The air was filled with the clangor of forges and the acrid smoke of furnaces. Its industry produced a variety of hardware and gained perhaps its greatest fame in the manufacture of axes. It was a craftsman-centered industry, and near the turn of the century, almost a dozen shops were manufacturing axes along the banks of Messalonsky Stream. Today, only one shop has survived the ravages of mass production and foreign importation. The Emerson-Stevens shop still stands, and still, but just barely, produces its line of fine handmade axes. Each axe starts as a sheared off hunk of bar steel and will eventually end up a 3-pound axe. Earl Wood's been starting this process most of his working life, and he's 52. Elwood Manson, at 47, is considered a youngster, but he's the master craftsman. Neither has an apprentice. In an oil-fired furnace, each bar or pattern reaches intense red heat, and the first step in forming the pole or head of the axe is begun. The ends of the pattern are plated or flattened under the uncompromising steel faces of the trip hammer. The pounding head is strapped by heavy steel bands to a huge beam of solid rock maple, which rises and falls by cam action. On the anvil, the pattern is doubled over to form the eye of the axe. Finally, the two ends are then welded together using granulated borax as the flux. The basic pole is now ready for a blade. Welding a cutting edge of high carbon steel to the softer pole of the axe is the second step Manson must perform, and is the first crucial step in the formation of a fine blade. A piece of high carbon steel is lightly attached cold and placed in the blast furnace. After intense firing, it is withdrawn, hammered at the anvil, and finally integrated as a blade with the pole of the axe. For this demanding and dangerous work, Manson makes only $1.25 an hour, and soon he'll be heading down to Connecticut to work in a large mill, where he can make twice that, pushing a broom. Not only does the bit steel become a blade, but the axe begins to assume the final shape of the pattern desired, whether it be a half wedge, Maine, Connecticut, Michigan, or Jersey pattern. The roughly formed axe now receives the refinements of final hammering. Hammering the head with a steel pin inserted through the eye ensures a uniform socket for the handle. smooth and slightly tapering sides are permanently set under the trip hammer and at the anvil. The head is at last squared off by the percussive strokes of the rapid hammer. And finally, with a few light blows at the anvil, Manson has completed forging an axe. The forged axe is now ready for grinding. This first grinding is called raising, and here wood further shapes the axe by grinding off the top of the head and the sides, and then grinding the bit down to the proper edge for tempering. The tongue he sits on gives him greater pressure between axe and stone, and a lot more steadiness, all of which help him grind each axe to near duplication. The grinding wheels Wood uses are made of carborundum and have replaced the traditional sandstone wheel. An average sandstone wheel used to measure 78 inches in diameter and weigh nearly 1.5 tons. Roy Barrett tempers the axes. Each axe, after reheating, is thrust into the ancient, bubbling tank of cold brine, where the sudden temperature change locks into the steel bit the hardness so essential to a fine axe. Barrett's skill at timing and eye for the look of a perfect temper are the key to this critical step. For if any portion of the bit is left soft, the edge will turn in use. If too hard, it is likely to break. These axes, the products of craftsmanship in forging, grinding, and tempering, now await only the refinements of final grinding, paint and label, and the application of a handle before they are ready for purchase. Wood removes all rough edges, the marks of earlier raising, puts the final edge on the bit, and polishes up the bit about 3 inches. The skill of his hand has been an important part of the creation of these axes, from the raw steel bar to the glittering finished blade. When a blade bites into timber, the strength of the lumberman's shoulder becomes the force of the axe through the handle. And thus, every good axe must have a handle of great strength and a head that fits true. This is Barrett's responsibility. His skill at handling an axe and his eye for alignment of blade and handle are unerring, and to a great degree, unappreciated. So too are most of the other steps and methods of axe making used in this shop. Not once in the creation of these axes has a precision measuring device been used. The craftsman's eye and muscle has determined the size, shape, and the quality of a fine tool, a product of the hands of men.